Hi friends, today let us discuss about labor codes in India. Recently, Government of India has introduced four labor codes and these four labor codes provide social and economic security for the large number of workers in India. So now let us discuss what are the important aspects related to these four labor codes, and more specifically in this lecture the comparison has been made between the pre-labor reform period and the post labor reforms period. So that means how the social and economic security for the working class has improved due to these four labor codes, and how the initiatives under these four labor codes are different from the pre-labor reform codes period, and how these initiatives will benefit the working class in India. So these aspects uh, are analyzed in this lecture. So to begin with, I would like to state that government announces implementation of four labor codes to simplify and streamline labor laws, and basically these four labor laws have resulted into the transformational change in Indian industrial sector and also service sector. So how these four labor codes have contributed for a transformational change in industrial and service sector. These four labor codes have contributed for the better wages, then safety, social security, and enhanced welfare for India's workforce. This is the advantage with these present labor codes. Then codes lay foundation for a protected, future-ready workforce and resilient industries, boosting employment and driving labor reforms for Atmanirbhar Bharat. So this particular point is very important. In order to achieve the goal of Atmanirbhar Bharat, these four labor codes will lay a foundation for protected, future ready workforce, then resilient industries, and boosting employment and driving labor reforms. So this point uh, you are supposed to focus. Then the code aligns India's labor ecosystem with global standards, ensuring social justice for all workers. Now let us see what are those four labor codes. These four labor codes are the Code on Wages 2019, then the Industrial Relations Code 2020, then the Code on Social Security 2020, and the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code 2020, with effect from 21st November 2025. And these four labor codes were initiated by rationalizing 29 existing labor laws. So these are the four labor codes initiated by the government of India in the recent past. Then the foundation for a future ready workforce and stronger resilient industries, driving labor reforms for Atmanirbhar Bharat. And as I said, the present lecture actually focuses on comparing the security provided for the working class during the pre-labor reforms period and the post-labor law reforms period. So this comparison has been made in this lecture. So the implementation of the four labor codes addresses the long pending need to move beyond colonial era structures and align with modern global trends. Together, these codes empower both workers and enterprises, building a workforce that is protected, productive, and aligned with evolving world of work, paving the way for a more resilient, competitive, and self-reliant nation. So this is the main objective of these labor codes. Now, let me present certain important points related to a comparison of the labor ecosystem before and after the implementation of the labor codes. So, the uh, crux of this lecture is comparing the conditions that were existing prior to the initiation of these labor codes and after the implementation of these labor codes. So that is the essence of this lecture. Now, the first point, that is formalization of employment. During the pre-labor reforms period, there was no mandatory appointment letters to the most of the workers. In fact, most of the workers did not have, especially informal workers, did not have any mandatory appointment letters. But during the post labor reforms period, now it is made that there is a necessity of mandatory appointment letters to all workers. Written proof will ensure transparency, job security, and fixed employment. So this is more advantageous to a worker. Then second important aspect is social security coverage. During pre-labor reforms period, there was limited social security coverage. But whereas during the post-labor reforms period, under the Code on Social Security 2020, all workers, including gig and platform workers, to get social security coverage, all workers will get PF, ESIC, that is a employee state insurance coverage, then insurance, then other social security benefits. So all such kind of social security benefits will be provided to all the workers, including the gig and platform workers. Then another important aspect is minimum wages. During pre-labor reforms period, minimum wages applied only to scheduled industries or employments. That means especially those who used to work in organized sector, they only uh, uh, used to have the assurance of minimum wages. Large sections of workers remained uncovered, and most of the unorganized sector workers, informal workers, uh, were not brought under the ambit of the minimum wages act. But now, during the post labor reforms period, under the code on wages 2019, all workers to receive a statutory right minimum wages payment. Minimum wages and timely payment will ensure financial security. So that means through the Code on Wages 2019, a worker is not only uh, paid a minimum wage, but the wages are paid on time, so that will ensure financial security to the workers. Then next aspect is preventive health care. During pre-labor reform period, no legal requirement for employers to provide free annual health checkups to workers. That means the employers did not have any obligation to provide free annual health checkup to their workers. But now, during the post labor reforms, employers must provide all workers above the age of 40 years with a free annual health checkup, promote timely preventive healthcare culture. So this is more advantageous for the workers uh, to maintain a good health than timely wages. During pre-labor reforms period, no mandatory compliance for employers payment of wages. But during the post-labor reforms period, it is mandatory for employers to provide timely wages, ensuring financial stability, reducing work stress, and boosting overall morale of the workers. Another important aspect is women workforce participation. During pre-labor reform period, women's employment in night shifts and certain occupations was restricted. That is, women's employment in night shifts and certain occupations was restricted. But whereas during the post labor reforms period, women are permitted to work at night and in all types of work across all establishments, subject to their consent and required safety measures. This point is very important. The women are permitted to work at night and in all types of work across all establishments. But however, this is with subject to their consent and required safety measures. Women will get equal opportunities to earn higher incomes in high paying job roles. So that means this will uh, contribute to reducing gender inequality in industrial and service sectors. Then next one, ESI coverage. During pre-labor reform period, ESI coverage was limited to notified areas and specific industries. The establishments with fewer than 10 employees were generally excluded, and hazardous process units did not have uniform mandatory ESIC coverage across India. So, this was the situation during the pre labor reforms period. But during the post labor reforms period, ESIC coverage and benefits are extended pan India, voluntary for establishments with fewer than 10 employees, and mandatory for establishments with even one employee engaged in hazardous processes. This is again very important point. The mandatory for establishments with even one employee engaged in hazardous processes. So social protection coverage will be expanded to all workers. So, this is a measure for social insurance and health insurance for the workers through ESIC coverage. Then, compliance burden. During pre labor reforms period, multiple registrations, licenses, and returns across various labor laws. But during the post labor reforms period, single registration is enough. Pan India single license and single return, simplified processes, and reduction in compliance burden. So, these are the important points with regard to the comparison between the social, economic, and insurance protection provided for the workers during the pre labor reforms period and the post labor reforms period. So, if at all a question is asked with regard to the comparison of the social security and economic security for workers during pre labor reforms period and the post labor reforms period, all these points will be helpful to the students appearing for various competitive examinations. Thank you.